We're very happy to have with us today Ms. Sylvia Rincon, a reporter from the Sinclair Broadcasting Group in San Antonio, representing both the Fox affiliate and NBC stations. It is quite a sacrifice for her to take time to be with us today, and we know you'll be really glad to hear her perspective from the media world. Thank you again for working with us, Ms. Rincon, and please take it away.
Thank you, everybody, for being here and for allowing me this opportunity. I'm really excited about it, and I do apologize for all the technical difficulties. A lot of the delays have much to do with, I guess, everything that's going on over here. There's a lot of changes going on here, but real quick, just a little bit about myself, just so you know who you're talking to. So I have been broadcasting in the world of news for 18 years now, and mostly radio and majority of it all television. So, and things have changed pretty drastically in that time. Since beginning, technology has definitely influenced a lot of what we do, and so there's a lot of different players now. And one of the things that I'm very passionate about when I do my stories, I've generally done crime and politics, but I go out of my way to look for stories that deal with science and technology and medicine for sure. And San Antonio is sort of a hotbed for these things because we do have the military here, and we do have a really great medical and sciences industry here that's growing all the time. Unfortunately, though, you'll notice that news products don't really push their medicine and science stories. You have to be a pretty specialized agency or organization in order for that to be a lead story or something. Usually, local newscasts will and continue to work on crime and politics and things of that nature. So that has a lot to do with how you see a newscast these days. And there's a lot of popularity these days in the networks taking over. And you'll see like shows like The Doctor and things like that. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the big happy family of what is communications and news from the perspective of just one reporter. I heard earlier someone talking about things like on the record and no comment, and so I want to address those a little bit later for those of you who heard that and talk about those. But yeah, a little bit about news. So everybody knows everybody, and people have this idea that Fox is conservative and NBC is liberal, and so when you get to the who's, that slide there, it's basically everybody knows everybody. Everybody is working with everybody, and the communications world these days is very incestuous. In that we are all pulling from different parts of each other. So in a regular newsroom, you'll get inundated. I literally get 1,000 emails a day. Most of them are junk as far as people making pitches for everything from tech gadgets to weight loss pills, but also the politicians are constantly inundating us with stuff. And then also there's our like UT Health System will also send us tons of things, but we get them by way of fax, by email. I mean, everybody's grabbing our attention. Even news agencies, we all subscribe to the same wire systems too. That's the other thing, is that there are really just 5 reporters in the world, and we just all share their information. That's a joke. But when you look at the stuff that comes out of Europe and like the AP wire and stuff, there's really sometimes only 1 or 2 people on the ground who start those stories. And then the other, they call it a herd reporting, everyone will just jump after that. Now, if you're a really hot topic, like right now, Ebola is really big, right? And medicine is huge right now. So there's a lot of herd reporting going on with that. And it can definitely happen in the sciences for sure. But it's important to understand that when you're dealing with a news agency, you're also dealing with all these other agencies, the ad agencies, the marketers, we're all watching each other, the politicians, the policymakers, even the businesses are seeing what's trending. And we'll get into that. So speaking of trending, that's a really good segue to meet the in-laws. So this particular slide is about how everything is changing. Used to be, it used to just be the networks, and then it was the cable networks, and then it was, the wires have always kind of been there. And when I say wires, I'm talking about Knight Ridder, Reuters, AP, Associated Press. They're all still there, but now we've been married into the social media. And I'll have you know that, believe it or not, Facebook and Twitter, as I speak to you right now, are making deals with all the major media conglomerates because the number one contributor of content to Facebook and Twitter are reporters. And Facebook and Twitter love that because it keeps them busy. It gives them clicks, it gives them trends. And so they are all trying to figure out how to make money off of that right now. And it makes it very difficult for reporters right now because in addition to trying to get stories, we're also having to feed these particular people. So a part of my day not just includes, we'll meet and we'll talk about what the big stories are, but let's just say there's something breaking, like let's just say we had an Ebola case in San Antonio. We haven't, but let's say that happens, and I'm the first reporter in, and they're like, Sylvia, you got to go. So literally in the process of making phone calls to people who are going to give me information, which would include, the hospital, our hazmat, the fire department, I'm also going to have to, en route, tweet and Facebook. And if I can put in a Vine, I have to do that. If I can Instagram, I have to do that. And so we try to do it in like these dashboards like Hootsuite and stuff to make it easier, but it is all still part of that workload. So when you talk to reporters, there's a new, it's not even a joke, but it's kind of a joke, and a reporter will ask, what are you working on? I'm like, well, what's going to get the most clicks? Because everything we do now is basically, let's go to the next, I think the next slide has this, on air, online, and on social media. But yeah, before we get there, the other issue, and this definitely affects researchers and people in your business. A lot of the information that we get, our search engines are Google, Yahoo, and some of these others, and a lot of reporters will go to Wikipedia, which is not at all encouraged because it's user-based. But I teach the younger reporters, and even when they come in after out of journalism school or out of broadcasting and communications, I have to just completely pound in their heads that Google doesn't know everything, and you still have to pick up that phone, and you still have to call the researchers, and you still have to call the doctors, and you still have to call the educators, and you have to triple check everything, because that goes back to that idea that only 5 reporters are reporting in the world, because people, and I'm not proud of it, but in the media, people will take from other reporters, and they will literally rip stuff from the wire and read it. And so if it's bad information or if it's not right, which goes to what I forgot the lady who was talking earlier, what she said, if it's wrong, fix it right then and there, or try your hardest to get that information right the first time, and make sure your reporter understands what they're saying the first time, because once it goes out there, it goes out to everybody, not just that local station, not just their website, but someone will go onto our website and they have taken my story totally and attributed it, but it'll go over to Philadelphia, it'll go over, like I did a story about acupuncture and a Komodo dragon, that went everywhere. Now they took the whole thing and I got credit for it, but still, the point is that it went out there. And so because there's so much content that needs to go out, people are grabbing wherever they can. And some of it is duplicated, but just like that old game you used to play when you were like in kindergarten and you did a little gossip game, it will slowly change into something that's not. So keep in mind that people in general will go to these search engines first and get their information there. So make sure that you address that. Like if you're talking to a reporter, ask them why or how they even came to you, if they are getting a hold of you. But you really want to be the person contacting them and really trying to guide that idea that you have or your information. So moving along. Yeah, so I think I have credible sources is huge. Like, so I tell people that you want to go straight to the organizations, the actual people, and verify all that stuff. That's all incredibly important. But let me see, moving right along. Let's go to...
Sylvia, can you tell us the number of the slide that you're going to? Thanks.
Yes, I'm going to try. Stand by. I think I pulled up I lost, my slide has frozen for a second. So I'm waiting for the little thing to stop twirling around. If you can hold on 1 second.
No problem.
And here we go. Let's get back into this. Okay, so yeah, the Reporter's World, slide 6, I think is where we are. Are you there?
Yes, we're there on the Reporter's
Okay.
World, slide 6. It's actually
Okay.
slide 7. Okay.
Okay, right, slide 7, okay. I didn't have the title page, but okay, so deadlines. So like I'm talking to you about the social media, right? So on top of the deadlines to go on air, when I get a story, the first thing we are trying to do, almost in tandem, is get something on broadcast, get something for the live show, then at the same time, tweet about it in Facebook, and we have to promise exclusivity. So a little bit of what goes out on social media is not everything. We still have to get them back on air because that's still the biggest moneymaker. But on top of all of that, we still have to publish a report online. And this is the same reporter who just 5 years ago just had to worry about doing a package, which is one of those 1 minute or 2 minute pieces, and like a VOSOT, which is like a 45-second story. When I started, that's all I really had to worry about, was doing something for the 5 p.m. and the 6 p.m., and then I was done. Not anymore. Now you're there like at least 2-3 hours later doing all this other stuff, and then going back and making sure that you got it right. So then what does a reporter want? Well, they want to meet their deadlines, obviously. They have to meet their requirements, and they're going to want easy access and trusted sources. So I think you've heard this already, where build a relationship with your reporter. If you're going to be in a community, learn that community. Watch those newscasts. Watch what they're putting online. In San Antonio, for example, a lot of it has to do with military science and cybersecurity. You could lead the newscast if you pitch the story just right. It is quite possible. But also keep in mind that, not every reporter is the same. They'll be fickle, they'll make it wrong, they're not going to be apologetic because they're already on the next best thing, because they got to keep going. Everyone is very competitive, and it's all about exclusivity. Because at this point, when you go out to a crime scene, you have 5 or 6 stations all reporting the exact same thing. What is going to make that so special? So they're going to kick you out, you're going to lose your job if you can't go to your boss and give him something that he can sell. Because at the end of the day, it's how do we make money on air, online, and how do we drive people back to the product? Because make no mistake, news is a huge business, huge. And it's getting bigger all the time. It took a couple of different hits. The paper took a big hit, but they're coming all back, but online, in digital media. All those writers are coming back. It just took a little while to redistribute their revenues. So that, and then you have all the different platforms that we're publishing all our different stuff. And so and it lasts for a little bit. Like, you may get your story out there, but you're going to want to, but you can give it legs, is what we call it. A story can have legs, which is if it is sexy enough, it's intriguing enough, exclusive enough, it'll last and get some really good longevity. But reporters, they are just super stressed out, and they're trying to do the best they can, and so they have to move on. So before the end, once you have given them their information, they're pretty much on to the next thing. So then let's go ahead and take a look at that video, and I'll have you guys watch it, and then I'll explain how that came to be and how we got that on air and how it got so much attention.
Jack Kane loves his dogs, his wife, and serving his country.
This rod's messed up.
The Canyon Lake native survived 15 months in Iraq. He was a gunner with the 82nd Airborne 573rd Cavalry, and it was no easy tour. He lost count of all the attacks.
I can't even count, maybe 20. Just IEDs that, throughout the whole 15 months we were there.
He suffered 5 concussions.
We ended up getting hit by an IED, and next thing I know, we're back at the patrol base, and I'm in the medic's room, waking up.
2 years after getting back from Iraq, Kane found himself waking up from a blast of another kind.
We were just laying on the couch one night watching Prison Break, and I flopped out into a seizure, and next thing I know, I woke up. I was in the back of an ambulance.
Those 5 concussions were enough for Kane to develop traumatic brain injury and eventually epilepsy.
She witnessed it, and it was scary for her, so that makes it scary for me as well.
TBI among veterans is a growing concern for neurologists like Dr. Jose Cavazos. He says there are thousands, maybe more, who could develop epilepsy years later because of TBI, and not just from the hits, but from the shock waves experienced from IEDs.
Not only they are out there, each of them deserves to be cared at the best that we can.
The VA has created special clinics throughout the country to deal with the growing number of vets developing epilepsy. But Cavazos says too many are still unaware that this could happen to them. Kane says he was one of many who thought he had dodged this major bullet.
It's just a concussion, thank God, but it doesn't always turn out to be just a concussion, because you get little extras like epilepsy or
He says he now knows there's help and wants to warn wounded warriors.
They should definitely check to see, go get an MRI, check to see if there's any kind of bruising or anything on your brain, so that way you're aware that it is possible that you may become epileptic from it.
Sylvia Rincon, Fox News at 9.
And just let me know when it's done.
It just finished. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, great. I was trying to time it.
That was a great clip. Thanks.
So this young man was pretty extraordinary, and most of my stories I get, one of my strengths is enterprising stories and coming up with ideas, because in order to survive for 18 years in broadcasting, you have to have that edge, that exclusivity, the stories that nobody else has. Nobody had this story, and I was fascinated because unfortunately a lot of my family is sick. My brother happens to have epilepsy. So I do have a great passion for covering medicine and technology and always being an advocate when it comes to disabilities and things that are out there. So we had been doing some work over at Brooke Army Medical Center, and then have also been doing some stories for the Epilepsy Foundation, and it just came across, we were doing also concussions, brain traumatic injury stories with the NFL, and we were having a conversation with the Epilepsy Foundation, and they were saying that there was this young man who had served in Iraq and Afghanistan and had epilepsy. So then I dug a little deeper, and it just made sense to me that I'm like, if these NFL players are getting seizures later, I'm wondering why we're not having a conversation about these veterans who have brain traumatic injuries and concussions. Wouldn't they be also, presenting and having symptoms? Well, sure enough, there have been some studies after Vietnam and some documentation that after several years, one of the symptoms from brain traumatic injuries was epilepsy, or one of the risks was developing epilepsy. And so that had already been established. So the question here was, how does this young man get the attention of Veteran Affairs and be listed as a wounded warrior? Because there were so many of them coming back with concussions. And this was all before the controversy with the VA hospital that blew up. There were already these individuals who were having issue getting funding or even getting the status of a wounded warrior, because if you get the status, then you get moved up in the ladder, of treatments. And it's, that's like a whole nother issue. But regardless, I personally went out into the community and had my ears open, right, and was reaching out. And then a couple of different people, when I reached out, referred me to some researchers at Brooke Army Medical Center and with the Epilepsy Foundation, and they had both been kind of reading and doing research on the same deal when it came to brain traumatic injuries. And then I also reached out to the sports medicine world as well. And so it all kind of made sense. And we did a series of follow-up stories to that one as well, and eventually did a series that also included sports medicine and those brain traumatic injuries. But the cool thing about it is that we eventually came up with, were able to really dig into the research that was being developed at the time. And now you see a bunch of those stories now. And now it's, I wouldn't say common knowledge, but a lot of people are aware of what concussions can do and how that is related to epilepsy. And I'll have you know that veterans now who do develop epilepsy from brain traumatic injuries do get listed as wounded warriors and are getting, hopefully, the help they need from the VA, although I think they're still having some issues. But so then on the other side of that, how did the scientists get me to that place? It was just conversations and reaching out to me and me reaching out to them and really going back to knowing your community and finding that reporter that is there. Like I've never had an issue finding stories that they eventually, will come to me and they'll be extraordinary. Like most recently, I was at the doctor's office with my mom who was having gastric bypass, and I learned a very startling statistic that cirrhosis of the liver, which I always associated with alcoholism, now one of the top causes of it is fatty liver tissue or fatty liver syndrome or something, and it has to do with our diet and diabetes and that's quickly taking over as a major cause. And so it's nothing to, so it's not, we have a drinking problem, we also have an eating problem. And see, that's how that particular study would be completely dwindled down to like a slug, what we call in the news. So cirrhosis of the liver, not just a drinking problem, an eating problem. So that takes us to the pitch. How do you make your research sexy and interesting and readable in the newscast? Well, like I told you, things have changed a lot in our industry. Clicks and sticks is what it's kind of all about. So if you go to slide 7, the pitch, when you're talking to reporters nowadays, they're going to be interested in, again, that exclusive information that nobody has. And if we are all talking about cirrhosis, or if we're all talking about a disability, or if we're all talking about the same general topic, what can you offer in your research that's really going to stick something out? It has to be, I hate this word, infotainment, but it is used a lot in the news business. And it makes me feel a little dirty sometimes because we're not entertainers. But you know what? We kind of are. The stories have to be compelling. The struggle that journalists have is that they do have to be compelling, but they also have to be true and honest stories. And you have to create memorable moments in all this. So one of our tasks is not just to take your information, but to also somehow make it emotional information. There are certain core things that TV targets, and they always go back to money, fear, teaching people something, and touching their hearts. We always go to these seminars and workshops, and they're like, you have to get back to somewhere where people are going to remember what you say. So how do you do that? Well, you affect their pocketbook, or you scare the crap out of them, or you teach them something that they're going to remember for the rest of their life, or you make them cry. And they've always been sort of the standard for this. But the trick is that if you are dealing, and hopefully you are dealing with a real journalist here, you're still, first and foremost, but I'm old school too, have always been about the truth. What is the truth right now? Forget about the deadlines, forget about having to do Twitter and all this crap. At the end of the day, I go into my newsroom, and the first priority I have is what is the truth of this particular story. So when I talk to you, I'm going to want to hear everything. So this is where it's all about developing a relationship with a reporter and finding out who really cares about that research, or even investigating the reporter themselves and finding out, which reporter around here volunteers a lot, maybe has family members who are sick, who can really empathize with your work. Because I have a core understanding of epilepsy and diabetes and cancer because my family's been, dealing with that for a long time. And by that, in that, I also have an understanding of disability. But I also have a sincere, really good relationship with our scientists over at Brooke Arby Medical Center and the Institute for the Surgical Institute they have here and the Cancer Research Center. So knowing and working with these people, they teach me how to say things. Like I will sit down with them and learn something so that I can tell that story properly. Because the last thing I want to do is put bad information out there. But in order for me to even have an argument or make a pitch to my bosses, I need to find those real people, and I need it to be as exclusive as possible so that I can be your champion in the newsroom. And that information I can only get from you. So when you're talking about the science behind something, like when people are talking about like Ebola or something, the first thing they're freaked out, right? But of all the stories that I see, I rarely and only recently have been seeing stories about how the virus actually works in our body. Frontline was doing this back in, early this year. They were doing stories like that. But your local media wasn't really doing that. They were just talking about where it was, how it's coming in, and how mistakes were being made. So that went back to fear. And again, I'm not proud of that, but I'm just telling you the realities of what those newsrooms are doing. Their first priority is to get out the biggest headline out there. And if it happens to be, it's going to be 20 seconds. And it's going to be a series of 20 and 30-second stories. So the challenge is to take complicated stories and dwindle them down to something that I think you guys mentioned, like a 12-year-old in the 6th grade. It's actually 3rd grade level. I mean, we bring it all the way down as much as you can. So I know that's not probably encouraging. I'm not proud, again, of that, but it is the business. And if you can find a journalist who can really stand up for what they believe in and hold their ground in that newsroom, you can get those stories out there. But it takes the last slide, which is the conclusion here. It does take, it sounds a little cheesy, but you have to be fearless, and you have to find someone who's just as fearless as you are to tackle the media. Right now, it is brutal out there. They're just trying to make money, it seems like sometimes. You still have a huge contingency of good reporters out there who are trying to do a great job, and we have very passionate young ones coming in. But it is, sales infiltrates our newsroom a lot. Sometimes we have to, they want to know who we're going to interview because if I want to go to an academic, they're going to say, are you talking about weight loss? Okay, well, we have a person who purchased time who's got a clinic, and it's the med something yada yada spa weight loss clinic. Why don't you talk to them first? I have to fight with them to say no, I'm not going to go to your paid sponsor guy and interview them because that's not who I want to interview. I want an unbiased, clean, interview and soundbite from an academic. But we actually have to have that argument. And at the end of the day, if you're going to be keeping this relationship with your reporters, make sure that you do it in phases. Like, there's no way they're going to do your entire, body of work. But you can keep it simple. Break it down into phases. So maybe the clinical trials are happening, or maybe, there's the last part of your research is in, but just before that comes out, maybe you can tease them with some information that just came and then do a follow-up later. But that all comes back to building a relationship with your media, with somebody in that media who cares and who understands. And don't ever give up. I mean, just like a reporter, you have to learn how to pester. And I'm a great beggar. I beg all the time. I beg with my bosses. I beg with my sources because I'm that passionate that I want to do that good of a job. And it's so challenging sometimes. So I hope I didn't scare anybody.
Thank you very much, Sylvia. That was really very interesting. We do have a question that came in, and let's see. What information tools and resources do you recommend to new reporters to get beyond Google and Wikipedia? What's in your toolbox?
My old Rolodex, my cell phone. I literally call. I tell them, call the people, call your sources. Like literally, let's just say that something pops up on the wire and something like, let me see, what's a thread? So we've had a bunch of stories that have spawned off of Ebola, for example. Like locally, you always want to localize everything, right? So your story may be national or even international. Like it'll be affecting everybody. But when you talk to the reporters in a particular area, they're going to want to localize it. So let's just say that we're talking about some kind of virus. Well, then what are our local hospitals doing? So what I will do, let's just say that story kind of came out, I will call that hospital. So the first thing I tell young reporters or other reporters is, you can get ideas from the web, see what the researchers are putting out there, see what the blogs are saying, but then call them up directly. Literally, my biggest, greatest tool is my phone and my feet. I get out, I drive, and I knock on doors. Those are going to be, you find a reporter who can do that, then those are the ones you really want to be on your side because they're not lazy and they're not just pulling stuff off the web.
Great. Well, thank you very much. We do have another question that's coming in. We'll see if we make it in time. Otherwise, we're almost out of time, and then we can hold that question over for a discussion period. Here we go. The question is, what would an opening pitch from a researcher to a reporter sound like?
I can help you save lives.
Wow, that's a good one.
Yeah, remember, it has to go back. It has to go back to those core things: money, fear, teaching your community something, and touching a heart. Or you can say, hey, there's a little girl who's dying, and we may have an answer to fix that or make her life easier. I'll find the characters. If you can find a character, and reporters love characters because we need them. That is our biggest, most powerful way to pitch a story in our newsroom is because we'll have that exclusivity of that individual. Everybody may have the same, you may put a press release out there and everybody may have the same research, but do they have that person?
Great. Well, thank you very much. We do have another question, but we're going to hold it over to the discussion session that's coming up. That was a really great presentation, Sylvia. Sorry for the little technical difficulties.
I am so apologetic about that. Oh, we'll do it so much better if you have me next time. But I was so thankful to talk to you guys about this. I'm very passionate, and I love what you guys are doing.
Great. Well, be hanging on there because we're going to get to the discussion shortly. That was the last of today's formal presentations, and we're going to take just a short break here, and then we'll move on to our online discussion.